He's trained over 84,000 individuals worldwide, including executives from Fortune 500 companies, entrepreneurs, professional athletes. And he helps ensure their vision is not only enduring, but actually creates the fulfillment and impact they want.
If we really think about it, any emotion we feel today is the byproduct of our past and our past conditioning and our past environment. So if we rely on our feelings that we experience today to make our choices and decisions relative to today and what we want for our future, we aren't able to change the circumstances of our life. It's so imperative to have a vision and a target in the future because we want to train and condition our emotions and our patterns relative to the outcomes we want to aspire to. And so from an emotional standpoint, our vision or future needs to be our context, not our past. Let's create an environment of conditioning that basically trains the nervous system the same way life has done it on our behalf unconsciously, and just make it a conscious process.
Welcome to Unreasonable Health podcast that aims to keep you young, fit, and healthy, no matter how old you become. So today is going to be a really amazing topic. We're going to be talking about how to transform your energy, how to transform your life with my friend Joey Klein. Joey, so good to have you here.
Dude, it's great to be here. I'm excited for today.
And your book, Inner Matrix, phenomenal. And so hopefully those of you who hear this show today have a chance to pick it up. But Joey, you're a transformational and mastery expert, an author and speaker, founder and CEO of Inner Matrix System. And this Inner Matrix System, it's something that I've been using personally. And Lena's my coach, as you know. And it's one of these things where we don't think about our emotions, and it's hard to think about what our internal reality is doing to our external reality. But I think Joey is better than anyone out there as far as helping you align your vision and your future with the direction you want to go. But we're going to jump into his story as we go through this. But just to give you a perspective of what a beast he is, he started Inner Matrix Systems in 2002, and Joey and I it was just fascinating hiking with you this summer in Denver, and you telling me about just how things work together for you building this product that is incredibly original. That's what you guys have. It's not like Joey just took what Tony Robbins said and repopulated it like so many other people do. No offense to anyone if you've done that, but we can all sniff it out. Joey's is completely original, but he's trained over 84,000 individuals worldwide, including executives from Fortune 500 companies, entrepreneurs, professional athletes. And he helps ensure their vision is not only enduring, but actually creates the fulfillment and impact they want. And so as we go through this, I think you guys will find it very enlightening. So Joey, let's dive in. The biggest thing that I found in working through the program is you start with the emotions. And why are the emotions kind of a central theme and a place that you have your students start with?
For sure, man. So, it's interesting because like so many modalities out there are all about sort of the mind and willing your emotions into order, so to speak, right? And what I find is like from a neurological perspective, we're not really wired or put together that way. So I think about like my friend's daughter, right? She was just born. She's like a year and a half, years old. She was at my house just yesterday. And right now she doesn't have any language, right? She's not speaking because she doesn't understand language because she doesn't know words yet. And yet she's been alive a year and a half. So like her entire communication system is emotions. Like, if she's happy, if she's sad, if she's angry, if she's, upset, like, all these things. And right now that's how she's interacting with the world in the way that all of us did. So the first 5, 6 years of life, it was all emotional communication, right? We were receiving emotions from our environment through mirror neurons. We were kind of through empathy, and then we were exchanging that information. So our first language really was emotion. And then later we learned language and the ability to think and the ability to speak. And so, from a pattern perspective, neurological pattern perspective, emotions engage. That tells the mind what to think. It directs our thinking. And then from there, we make choices, decisions, and we take action. So in my mind, it made sense to learn how to manage emotions directly, as opposed to kind of try to beat the emotions in order by way of thinking with enough strength or veracity or consistency to sort of get them to behave. And what I have found is that I've never been able to think my way out of an emotion.
Yeah. That's funny. And tell me what you mean by that. I mean,
Yeah. So like when people are sad, what I find is like we get caught in certain loops, right? And when I say like sadness directs the mind to think, right? Emotion directs the mind to think. When people feel sad, they go, oh, why am I sad? And what's not working in my life? And they always focus on the absence of things with the mind. And so if we try to figure our way out of feeling sad by way of rationalizing and intellectualizing it, usually what happens is we're more sad as a result of the engagement with ourselves. Whereas if we sort of, have the discipline, or we learn not to engage the mind first, and we learn to center the nervous system. We learn to calm the nervous system so that we emote, like we direct or we impact emotions directly first. So like, through breathing techniques that activate a parasympathetic response in the brain. And it's like, oh, now I feel kind of calm, or I feel centered, or I feel peace, or I feel hopeful. Like if we can generate the emotion first and then think about the same situation, all of a sudden we're like, oh, I'm so grateful that I have these things in my life, or here's what I learned, or actually I have a lot of friends in my life. Like I'm not actually all alone. There's all these people that care about me. And so we view situations very differently depending on the emotion that we're feeling. And so if you don't change the emotion first, which is counterintuitive for most people, it's very hard to think your way out of or beyond emotion, right? So we got to learn to shift the emotion first, then think things through. And we'll find that we have better solutions that way. We're much more effective if we can learn that technique and that ability.
because so many times we have an emotion that comes up like sadness or anger or whatever it is, and we think it's external. It's like, oh, because of this thing keeps happening, then I'm going to be angry all the time. But actually what you've trained me is to, acknowledge that there's anger there, and sit with that emotion instead of trying to, like you say, you can't think your way out of being frustrated or angry. There's this kind of primal drive to it. So what's the next step once people have identified? And I'm going to encourage all of you to just think of the most recent kind of strong emotion that you felt, and maybe Joey can walk you through some of his inner matrix training if you're open to that, Joey.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I find is like managing emotion really comes down to three basic steps, three very simple steps, which can take a little work to master. It's like anything, it's simple but not easy, right? And so it's like if we're angry, as the example you just gave, the first step is developing an awareness and sensitivity to the fact that we're angry in the first place. Like we've got to know where we're at. And that sounds obvious and simplistic, but I had one of my earliest mentors said, Joey, you're going to be the hardest person for you to see. And what I find is, especially when I work with like high performers, right? Like business owners, entrepreneurs, pro athletes, things like this, I'll ask them how they feel. And they often can't articulate the emotions that they're inside of. It's like, well, like this person won't listen to me. I need to get them to listen to me. They don't respect me. Here's all the things they're doing that I need them to do, and on and on and on. I go, yeah, but how does that make you feel? And then we come back to the same question again and again. And then people they just get louder, and they keep telling me the same idea that they're trying to present to me as though I didn't hear them the first, 6 times. And I say, yeah, but do you think, like, what emotion does that elicit? So even though we're feeling it and our nervous system is expressing an emotion, it doesn't mean that we can actually identify the feeling that we're inside of. And a lot of people go, well, why does that matter? Why is that important? And it's like, well, I do stupid stuff when I'm angry. Like, I don't know about you, but like, I've done some really idiotic things when I'm upset, even though I like to think I'm a fairly intelligent person, right? And like in my early teenage years and early 20s, Like I grew up in a very like kind of, abusive and kind of a physical environment, right? Where like if your brother wanted to show me affection, if my brother wanted to show me affection, he'd punch me in the arm, right? Or something
Yeah.
like that, or put me in a headlock. And then if he was upset with me, the punch would just feel different, right? And the headlock would occur differently. But that was kind of the way we expressed with each other, right? And so it's like when I feel upset, like I literally used to just hit people in the face. Like I would just I was like unhinged. I was completely out of control because that's like what I learned from my environment. Or I would
Wow.
say things like all of us do that I don't mean. And then after I calm down a bit and I'm no longer angry, I'm like, oh, I didn't mean to say those things, or I didn't mean to write that email. Like people write emails and they send them to their boss. And then they read it the next morning. They're like, shit, I hope I have a job tomorrow. Like I probably should not have written that. But in the time that we're angry, it feels righteous. It feels correct. We're doing them a favor and so on and so forth, right? And so it's like if we don't know we're upset, we're probably going to do things that are going to have the impacts that are creating things we don't want, or sadness, or we feel regret or fear. We won't
Yeah.
engage opportunities and things like this. So it's like first step, if we make it real simple, is really where am I at? And is it actually going to align and drive me to the things that I want? And then step two is, can I calm that down from a centering perspective? Like, can I get the emotion to quiet down? Like if I'm feeling angry or sad or guilt or shame or whatever it is, how do I get that to just calm down and to center? Again, we can't think our way through it. We've got to learn how to stimulate and train the nervous system directly to start operating from a different neurological perspective, like the prefrontal cortex, calm the amygdala down, get out of fight or flight into, that kind of like rest and rejuvenate mode where peace and serenity and joy is accessible to us. Then step three is activate the emotion that we want to train, that we want to know, with regularity, that we want to get good at feeling. That's going to give us access to a higher intelligence, such as joy and inspiration and empowerment and all the things we all want to feel, and all the things that we, when we feel those things, like we know we perform best in that space. And so then the third step is activate those love-based states, and execute from those higher emotions. And so it's like, if we really oversimplify it, it's like, be aware of where I am,
Yeah.
stop those things that don't align from a feeling perspective, activate the emotion or the perspective that does align, and then execute. And although that's very simple, it's obviously not always easy to execute. But if we break it down, we just want to get really good at mastering those three basic steps.
Yeah. When I've been working on my own emotional patterns, the emotions that I got really in touch with are, Elena would take me on these future quests, and it's like, okay, what does that feel like? And I was like, oh, it feels good. And she's like, no, let's get deeper into really defining what the other side of these emotions are. And it really came down for me, it was gratitude and fulfillment. Those are, that's the state I wanted to be in. And so it's almost like she's helped me project myself into the future, the person I want to be. I don't want to be frustrated or angry or overwhelmed or depressed, but those emotions are always going to come because I'm human just like anybody else. But actually recognizing the emotion, giving it space, and then understanding where I want to go has been incredibly helpful, because my wife has always wondered, like, you never talk about your emotions. And so for men out there, how do you get dudes like me and like alpha men to unwind? Because you work with some of the most successful people on the planet, and it's not easy for us to be anything but like the stoic person that we think we are, or we want people to think we are. But what's kind of the ways you break into that?
I think initially it all starts with helping people understand, especially men, that it's an emotion, like it's a performance tactic. And if they don't leverage their emotion and get competent with managing them at a certain level, then they're at a performance disadvantage. And so like another way to think about it is, if you're, obviously like entrepreneurship, or if you're a pro athlete, like, a top executive at a Fortune 100 or 500 company, like these are very stressful, very competitive environments. And especially today more than ever, if you don't have a level of emotional capacity and ability to manage emotion, you're at a disadvantage. And individuals who have a higher level of emotional ability and capacity and training are going to outperform you. And so once people understand that, like once men really understand that I'm at a performance disadvantage if I don't learn to manage emotions in a really effective way, like as soon as they get that, they're all in. And then the second thing that's so important for especially men, but really anybody to understand is that like if we're not managing emotion well, we are in many ways, even though we're highly intelligent, at times we're executing from a place of incompetency. Like when we become afraid or we become angry or we like start getting into these states, we become highly reactive. We do things we know we shouldn't, right? And so all of a sudden that starts costing us. And then the other thing is like I think a lot of people have connected emotions with being soft. And the reality is the opposite, right? Matter of fact, the greater ability you have to manage your emotions, the more consistently you can be empowered and confident and inspired, which produces, energy and increases performance. Whereas a lot of people, they like men in particular, they think that if I'm emotional, that I'm kind of ooey gooey or something, right? Or that I'm highly I don't know quite the word for it, but like kind of like when we used to be called a sissy or things like that in the past.
Sure.
But really what it is like the more I am in touch with my emotions and can manage it, the greater capacity I have to avoid those, I don't want to call them weaker, but those like emotions that when present are going to decrease my performance. Because like if I feel insecure with my business, that is not a helpful for building my business and being confident, being strategic, and taking calculated risks and things like this. But the average entrepreneur will show like a really confident front, but like what's going on inside is terror, insecurity, and panic and stress a good portion of the time. So if that's where you're driving from 80% of the time, if you develop no additional business skills, but you just started learning how to access a sense of confidence and empowerment when you engage with your company, you will see a performance increase 100-fold by doing nothing more than managing yourself at a higher capacity. And where I really, realized this for myself was in martial arts, because I remember when I was training, I would train at the dojo and I would do a form or I would spar or we would do submission grappling and I would win like clockwork. Like I was like one of the top three, in the country, slash world at a point in time in the martial art that I studied. But then I would go to compete and I would get last place and I would like forms or like I would do them 1,000 times and I would forget my moves and I would lose to somebody who never beat me in practice. And it was so obvious that people would come up to me after matches and be like, how'd you lose against them? Like, you're so much better than them. And I'm like, thanks for the reminder. Now I'm just even more upset. Right. But like when I started paying attention, I noticed that like when I was at the dojo, I felt confident and I was just having fun. Like there was joy there. And when I went to compete, I focused too much on, oh, people are watching me and I need to win. And what if I don't, what if I don't make it? And so on and so forth. And the emotions were, insecurity and I was anxious and I was afraid. And so all of a sudden, these skills that I had trained thousands and thousands of hours and years and years and years to build were completely inaccessible to me simply because of the feeling that I was inside of. And once I noticed this, I was like, great, when I go to a tournament next time, I'm going to basically be aware of how I feel. I'm going to use my breath work. I'm going to center. And I'm just going to close my eyes, pretend I'm at the dojo, and I'm going to feel that sense of joy and confidence and fun within my body. And once I feel that, I'm going to go perform. And when I did that, that year after, I won 3 world championships in a row. And I didn't change anything except for the emotional state in which I was executing from. And so for me, it became a very practical thing. Like, oh, if I can manage my emotions, I perform at a higher level. If I don't manage them and I don't develop a capacity there, then I'm going to get in my own way a lot. And once men realize that, once any individual realizes that, we realize that from a performance standpoint, like producing the outcomes we want in our life, there's nothing more important to trying to train and develop.
Jeez. Well, and I think you like the people you work with, you think if the emotions are the big barrier, I mean, That's pretty dramatic. You just learned to tame your emotion, and then you could actually execute on the skills that you already had. So if you think of the big barrier in people's lives when it comes to showing up how you want to in your relationships, or if you're building a business or learning new skills, or just actually learning to enjoy yourself and have a better relationship personally, I think that's one of the best things your work does is I kind of understand the way that my nervous system works better, and it's actually helped me have a better relationship with myself. And believe it or not, I'm the only person that I'm with 100% of the time. So I should probably have a good relationship with me.
It's so helpful that way, right? And I
Yeah,
love the way that you said that because like I think a lot of people don't connect the dots that way is that it's a nervous system development. Like
yeah,
emotions aren't this etheric sort of weird thing that are out there that are attacking us like a virus. It's trained and conditioned in our own nervous system, whatever it is that we feel. And so it's really great when you realize that because it's like, well, if I trained and conditioned sadness or anxiety or depression or whatever it may be, and you realize, oh, I can actually train and condition joy and fulfillment or confidence or a sense of peace. It's a game changer.
yeah. And even when we start working with people on their health, the first thing we're working on is the HPA axis. It's that stress response in the nervous system where people are in fight or flight. And so we get them on different peptides that help activate the pituitary gland and release better cycles of melatonin and cortisol. And if we don't do that, the healing is just prolonged, and it's really challenging to get them where they want to go. So that's why we've had your work. We've been introducing it to our clients in the Health Accelerator community, which a lot of you probably have heard Lena speak. And it's been really empowering, not only for my team, but we've also had several of our clients here at East West go through the training and loved it. And maybe we could talk about your live events a little bit because Tucker was there and Avery and from my team, and they came back and their eyes are just wide open. They're just like, that was incredible. It was as much work. It's almost like they ran a marathon is what it felt. When someone runs a marathon, they're
Mhm.
like, that was the hardest damn thing I've ever done, but I'm so glad I did it. But tell me how you run your events and how you get the energy to keep going. I mean, because it's not like you go 2 hours and then everyone takes a break. It's game on.
Yeah. Well, what I've noticed is the body has aged and gotten a little bit older. Like in my 20s, I used to do like 40, 42 weekends a year, no problem. And just the body just dealt with it. And actually, I was so grateful to find you and your work because, the things that you guys are doing over at East West has meant a tremendous amount for me in terms of the longevity standpoint, having the energy to keep doing the work and serving people at the level I want to serve them. It's like I just have an endless amount of energy now, and I actually have to watch it because I feel so good that I'm like, maybe I can do two a days in my workouts, and maybe I don't need as much rest. And I think I
Easy,
getting on
Joey.
the verge of blowing myself up.
That's
So,
awesome. But the events, I mean, and I appreciate that, and it's an honor to be able to work with you. But the how do you get the whole room engaged for that period of time? I mean, when we think about what the inner matrix is, it's so personalized, and I'd imagine that has something to do with it because everyone realizes if you can master this one thing called your inner matrix, then you can master everything in life. Or maybe I'm
yeah.
wrong, but I'd love to get some perspective on that.
No, I think you're right on track with what you said there. Like master your inner matrix, you master your life, right? And the reason is, and the way I look at it is like your inner matrix, which is basically your unique set of pattern dynamics. It's different for every one of us, is really trained and conditioned the same way. Even though they're unique and the way the programming or the conditioning happens is unique to everybody, the way it happens is the same. Just like everybody's body is unique, right, in terms of how it functions. But the way you condition it, the way you train it, the way you optimize it really is consistent in many ways. And so unique set of patterns is like emotion as it gets trained and conditioned that drives the thinking in the mind, which then moves into choices, decisions, and actions, and then that repeats. And so if we look at our emotion And we go, well, where did they come from? Like I used to, like I get curious about things and then I become obsessive about them. Like that's kind of my nature, right? And I used to think, well, where did emotions come from? And if we really think about it, any emotion we feel today is the byproduct of our past and our past conditioning and our past environment. So if we rely on our feelings that we experience today to make our choices and decisions relative to today and what we want for our future, we aren't able to change the circumstances of our life because the
Mhm.
emotions we feel right now aren't a byproduct of our current circumstance. It's not because our husband or wife are doing what they're doing, right? It's not because my work isn't working out or because I got laid off or my business is struggling. It's like we're not actually feeling those things because of the circumstances. We're feeling what we're feeling because of all of our past conditioning from a nervous system standpoint. And so things happen today. And then our inner matrix says we should feel sad relative to what's occurring because of prior conditioning. And so when you were talking about vision earlier, it's like it's so imperative to have a vision and a target in the future because we want to train and condition our emotions and our patterns relative to the outcomes we want to aspire to. And so from an emotional standpoint, our vision or future needs to be our context, not our past. And so if I go, I want to be in a healthy dynamic relationship, then I need to understand that my current emotions, if I've never known a healthy dynamic relationship, aren't going to get me to that vibrant relationship that I'm looking to experience. And so when I came to understand that like all emotions are conditioned from our past that we're experiencing in the moment and how conditioning occurred, that's kind of what we set our whole weekends up around was let's create an environment of conditioning that basically trains the nervous system the same way life has done it on our behalf unconsciously and just make it a conscious process. And the reason people are engaged, like we'll start at Saturday morning and we'll go from 10 a.m. until 10 p.m. and we go from 10 a.m. until 5 p.m. on Sunday, and it's intensive and full immersion on purpose, is
Yeah.
because it's like we want to create an environment where people learn to become aware and sensitive to the emotions they're feeling, experientially learn how to center those emotions, how to manage them, how to actually turn those emotions off, how to get clear on the vision or the outcome we want to aspire to, and then how do we access before people leave that training the emotions and the feelings that they want to experience, and then start reconditioning them. And so 90% of the training that I do is experiential, because if people aren't actually doing and executing, we can't replicate, we can't actually apply it in our life. And so the reason the weekends are like running a marathon is because we are actually rewiring the neural networks in the brain. And so, to rewire the neural networks in your brain and to get your brain to physically function differently requires a tremendous amount of energy. And so it's like, what people do when they show up on Saturday, they're not just learning stuff, they're not just understanding things. We're walking people through a step-by-step process of exercises and a system that basically rewires one's nervous system before they leave. And so it's very dynamic. You're feeling emotions, you're experiencing the things shift. We learn from one another because like one person might be working with their relationship, one person might be working with their business, another person might be working with some kind of body challenge they got going on. And the way we tend each of those realities from an inner matrix perspective is exactly the same. And so it's like I always tell people at the beginning of each weekend, I'm like, we're going to see some major transformations happen this weekend. And if anybody wants, you can raise your hand. I'll bring you up here on stage and we will transform whatever it is you have going on from an experiential standpoint before you leave this weekend. And I think it's helpful because people see like people manage really extenuating circumstances like real time before they leave that weekend, and they'll see it transform for the person, and they get to physically see their face and they get to physically see this person access a new paradigm, and it just gives everybody more permission. And so I think that you're all supporting each other in an ecosystem that is designed to stimulate the nervous system and actually train the inner matrix in a new way.
Man. Yeah, and you'll have hundreds of people there. And it's almost like you just bring the energy together. And in your work, the impressive thing about you, Joe, is you are someone who's continually learning, but it's not like you went to school, you got the degree, and then you started doing this. But what was your biggest source of inspiration in creating such a powerful movement?
A lot of pain.
Pain. Okay. Yeah. I guess that is the human motivator, isn't
That's exactly right. Like
it?
I know today it's like it's very popular. People are like, I want to be a coach and I want to be on stage and I want to write a book. And I was like, I never want to talk in public and I never want to write a book and I want to stay as far away from any of that as possible. Right. I remember my high school teacher was like, what do you want to do? I was like, I know three things I don't want to do. I don't want to talk in public. I don't want to like give speeches. I don't ever want to write a book. I hate English and I don't want to be any kind of actor, right? I don't want to do that. And so it's like, I'm just checking them off the list, all the things I never wanted to do, write a book and like speak in public, etc.
Yep.
So it's like, I never wanted to do any of this. It all started with really, I dropped out of college my first semester because it just wasn't a fit for me. And I had a really challenging environment that I grew up in. It's pretty abusive. And so it was like basically drug and alcohol became my life for a little over 2 years. And you wouldn't have met me a day that I was sober because it was just my way of numbing my emotions and dealing with the pain that I was in because I didn't have any other access point at that time. Ultimately, I scared myself. I pushed it too far one time. And I'm pretty sure that if I didn't overdose, I came really close and I almost died. And I was like, man, if I keep living this way, I'm not going to be alive in a year. And I think I'm here to live for something more. And ultimately, I met a mentor who invited me to be a live-in student with them in Boulder, Colorado. And he's kind of a new agey type dude and was like, I'm going to teach you this thing called the healing path. And I was like, I think you're a lunatic, but it's going to get me out of my environment and situation. And so I went to Boulder, ultimately met my next mentor there who was like really steeped in ancient wisdom traditions, Taoist meditation, and they were a Hindu guru. So they were yoga and like Hindu meditation. They were also a psychologist, a functional medicine doctor. So like really intelligent, had been working with people for 50 plus years. And that was really my beginning of kind of understanding how to find my way out of a lot of pain and suffering. And it was actually my mentors who were like, if you want us to continue teaching you, you're going to have to teach others. And I was like 22 or 3 at the time. And I was like, I can't teach anybody else, nor do I want to. Why would I ever want to do that? And they're like, oh, it's service. It'd be a good thing to help other people. I was like, I don't want to help other people. I just need to figure myself out and like figure out what I'm gonna do with my life. They're like, well, you should just do this. Right. So they basically bribed me into, you're going to train others and otherwise I'll stop teaching you. And I had 2, 3 different mentors say this to me. So I started training people. And then ultimately it started taking off, turned into a one-on-one practice, turned into workshops. My clients asked me to write a book. I wrote a book, more workshops. And then, it became, kind of what it is today over the last 20 years. And it was interesting because like now it's like I find that like serving people, making a difference, helping people to eliminate suffering as efficiently as they can and truly creating lives they never thought would be possible is the most fulfilling thing I could ever imagine doing. So it was accidental / directed by my mentors in a little covert way is how I got here.
Yeah. Well, and how many times have you been over to India? I mean, you spent a lot of time over there with some of these gurus.
Yeah, like India and like the ancient wisdom traditions is where I learned the foundation of what we do from a training perspective. I would go to India maybe once or twice a year, or then every other year, and I would be there maybe a month to 2, and we would be inside of internal training or meditation 8 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. It was very like ashram life. You wake up, meditate several hours in the morning, do a little cleaning around the temple, several hours of meditation in the afternoon, a little bit of cleaning, and then many hours of more inner training or meditation at night. And what I found was like the more I executed these very specific inner techniques and tactics, the better I felt. And that was how I learned how to train higher emotional states such as joy and peace, and that it really was a training. It wasn't something that just happened organically. And I met a Harvard-trained neuroscientist later on who was like, hey, here's the impact that it's having on the brain and from a nervous system standpoint. So I kind of let go of the ritual and some of the religious dogma, which I'm not saying is bad. If that's your thing, like that's awesome. I think it has a place. But from like being able to support or serve people, I wanted to make it accessible to just everybody. So I didn't want it affiliated with any kind of religion. And so it was just very much like, oh, when you focus the mind in this specific way, there's an impact on the brain. And when you breathe in this specific way, there's an impact on the brain. And so it was like, great, let's like, well, as I understood that more and more, I worked with this like, my meditation masters or teachers. I worked with this neurologist and I worked with a Harvard trained psychologist. And they kind of helped me start creating a curriculum of training from a personal development curriculum from a training perspective, as opposed to sort of a theory perspective. Because I feel like a lot of people, they're talking about theory, but they don't know that that theory is necessarily going to translate to the result. Whereas for me, it was like, if I put literally 300 to 500 people through the same sequence of exercises and 90% of them access a particular result, great, that becomes part of our curriculum. And I understand that it actually works. And that's kind of been how we created our curriculum today and how we refine it. So like, that was kind of my journey initially in like ancient wisdom traditions, was like spending time in temples in India and Japan, Thailand, actually, learning like these inner training techniques that they've been doing thousands and thousands of years, in my opinion, because they work.
Right. Well, and you made it. You bridged the gap because I've worked with a lot of Eastern teachers and Zen Buddhists and did Zazen for a long time. But your work is almost like I don't want to call it a shortcut because it still is work, but you created an access point that I've never seen someone like just kind of. It's almost like you were able to thread the needle in just a great way of merging the Eastern and Western worlds and those science with kind of the inner training. And my hat's off to you because it's rare that you get someone who's got the genius that you've got to actually bring it forth. And I love how you said it was pain that did it because. As you mentioned earlier, your childhood wasn't easy. It wasn't like you came from a house where your nervous system could just relax. It was always on. And so, instead of running from it, you confronted it head on and you've created what I see as something that's just begun where, you've helped 84,000 people and counting. And that's just going to be continually multiplying as you go. But what's the future of Joey Klein? What does that look like for inner matrix systems and what new projects you working on?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, for us, it's like it's just all about impact. I feel like over the last 2 decades, we've really refined our systems and our tactics, our community, the ecosystem of like technology and support from a team perspective. We got this amazing team, that we've built over the last 20 years who are supporting all of our clients and our customers and those that we serve and support. And so now it's like, I just want to, at this point, give as many people access to like really practical and effective transformational work as possible. For me, I remember instinctually when I first began this journey, I looked at sort of, the traditional methods that I think have a place. And I didn't see that they were getting the results for people that I knew. And in some cases, it seemed like it was making matters worse in many cases. And so I was like, instinctually, I was like, I'm not going down that path. I'm gonna go find it elsewhere. And it took me all over the world. And over the years, I found things that worked really well, and I've gone down some paths that did not go so good. And so for me, it's like I just want to and especially in today's environment, it's like there's so much access like never before, but you don't have a lot of qualified access. And so people are genuinely looking for like, man, what's the thing that's going to help me get out of pain and suffering as efficiently as possible, or create the life that I know is possible, that I know I want, but it just seems to be just out of reach. And so at this point, it's just about scaling and how many people can we serve and how many people can we give access to what we're doing as possible, because I know it can produce the outcomes and the results in a very methodical, predictable way. And so it's like, we've done tens of thousands. I really want to over the next 20 years, because I know I'll be doing this in 20 years. It's like definitely my life's path and what I've decided to commit myself to. Can we do millions, right? Like how big can we go?
It will be. And I'm so excited. I appreciate your work, appreciate you as a human, a friend. And what's the best place for people to reach out to you and get in touch with their own inner matrix?
Yeah, three best ways to get started. We've got free book. If you just pay shipping, we'll send you a book and a little kit to kind of get started. And that's theinnermatrix.com. So if you go to theinnermatrix.com, you can grab the book, free shipping. We'll send it out to you and get you started with a complimentary course. joeyklein.com is a great way to just interact with me directly. And then if you want to follow me on Instagram, the real Joey Klein, happy to start training you up that way as well.
Right. We'll provide all those links in the show notes. Joey, any final words of wisdom or things that you would love to share that we haven't talked about?
No, man, I think this was awesome. It's great to have you as a friend and get to know you better. And, it's going to be fun to see how we create and collaborate in the future. And yeah, looking forward to serving.
Awesome. Really appreciate you. And for everybody who listened to this today, if you guys love the show, make sure you share it with people in your life who you think may benefit from it. And from what I can tell, I think any human, if you're human, you need this work. It will transform your life. So appreciate you guys for listening, and we will see you on the next show.